Some words, seemingly harmless, can shatter what's left of a relationship. When my daughter said my room smells like a nursing home, I knew I was no longer family in the very mansion my money helped buy. They thought I'd continue to shrink myself, to fit into their lives quietly. But they forgot one thing: silence. When nurtured long enough, becomes the perfect fuel for revenge. And at 74, I had nothing left to lose. My name is Margaret Hale, and I used to believe that family meant something more than shared blood and obligatory holiday dinners. At 74, after dedicating my life to being a good mother, a reliable employee at Brighton & Company, law firm, and a devoted wife until Harold passed 3 years ago, I thought I'd earned at least a modicum of respect from my only daughter. How naive of me. The stroke happened on a Tuesday morning while I was watering my petunias. Nothing dramatic, just a sudden weakness in my left arm and a moment where words seemed to slip away like water through my fingers. The doctors called it mild, said I was lucky. Elaine, my daughter, sat by my hospital bed, wringing her hands, insisting I couldn't live alone anymore. "Mom, what if it happens again and no one's there?" she'd said, her voice thick with what I mistook for concern. So I sold my little townhouse, the one Harold and I had paid off 20 years ago, and moved into Elaine's sprawling colonial in Westchester. She and Richard had 4 bedrooms, after all, and the grandchildren were away at college. "There's plenty of space," she'd assured me, helping me pack my life into boxes labeled Mom's Room in her neat handwriting. The first few weeks were pleasant enough. I had my own bathroom, a view of the backyard where my new flower beds could go, and Elaine even hung my favorite Monet print above the dresser. I cooked Sunday dinners, shared stories with Richard about my days at the firm, and felt, perhaps for the first time since Harold died, that I wasn't entirely alone. Then came that Thursday morning in April. I'd risen early, as was my habit, to make coffee before the house stirred. The arthritis in my hip made the stairs a careful negotiation, but I managed. I was halfway down when I heard Elaine's voice from the kitchen, sharp and clear in the morning quiet. "I know, Susan, I know," she was saying into her phone. "But what choice did I have? She had a stroke. I couldn't just leave her there." I froze, my hand gripping the banister. "The smell is the worst part," Elaine continued, and I heard her move toward the coffee maker. "It's like, God, this sounds terrible, but it's like a nursing home. That old person smell, you know? It's in the hallway now. Richard bought 3 air fresheners just for upstairs." My chest tightened. I looked down at my flannel nightgown, the same one I'd worn for years, washed every week, lavender-scented fabric softener and all. I've tried dropping hints about hygiene, but she's so sensitive these days. A pause. The clink of a spoon against ceramic. Yesterday, she wanted to hang these awful doilies in the living room. Doilies, Susan, like we're living in 1950. I stood there for 5 more minutes, listening to my daughter catalog my deficiencies, how I moved too slowly, talked too much about the past, watched television too loudly, how having me there was an adjustment and temporary, thank God, because there are some nice facilities nearby. When she finally hung up, I crept back to my room, my smelly old person room, and sat on the edge of the bed. The Monet print stared down at me, its water lilies suddenly looking like graves floating on dark water. I didn't go down for coffee that morning. When Elaine knocked to check on me, I claimed a headache. "Maybe you should air out your room, Mom," she suggested through the door. "Fresh air helps with headaches." "Of course, dear," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Fresh air, that's just what I need." The signs of my erasure came gradually, like dust settling on forgotten furniture. First, it was my reading chair, a worn leather recliner that had cradled Harold through his final months, and me through countless sleepless nights since. One Tuesday afternoon, I returned from my doctor's appointment to find it gone from the corner of the living room where I'd positioned it to catch the afternoon light. "Oh, Mom," Elaine said when I asked, not looking up from her laptop. "We moved it to the basement. Richard's client mentioned how dated it looked, and we have that dinner party next week." The basement, where things went to be forgotten. 2 days later, I noticed the family photos on the mantel had been rearranged. The recent ones, Elaine, Richard, and the kids at Martha's Vineyard, their Christmas ski trip to Aspen, were prominently displayed in new silver frames. The older ones, including the photo of Elaine's first piano recital where I sat beside her on the bench, had vanished. We're updating the decor. Richard explained when he caught me searching for them. Marie Kondo says to only keep what sparks joy in the present. I wondered if I still sparked joy in anyone's present. The Wi-Fi password changed the following week. I discovered this when my tablet couldn't connect, cutting me off from my morning routine of reading the news and checking emails from my few remaining friends. When I asked Elaine for the new password, she sighed as if I'd requested something monumental. It's complicated. Mom, all numbers and symbols. Here, I'll write it down. She scribbled something illegible on a Post-it note. Though honestly, too much screen time isn't good at your age. Maybe try reading actual books? I'd worked at a law firm for 35 years. I'd mastered legal databases when computers still took up entire rooms. But sure, passwords were beyond me now. The flowers were what finally broke through my polite silence. I'd spent a weekend planting marigolds and zinnias along the front walkway, the same varieties I'd grown in my old garden. Cheerful bursts of orange and pink that reminded me of Harold's smile. I'd weeded and watered them faithfully, my knees protesting but my spirit lifting each time I saw new blooms unfurling. Monday morning, they were gone, in their place. Uniform white gravel and geometric boxwood shrubs. The landscaper said annuals were too high maintenance, Elaine informed me over breakfast. This is more modern, clean lines, better curb appeal. I stared at my oatmeal, counting the raisins to keep from crying. 1, 2, 3. Mom, did you hear me? Yes, dear, clean lines. That evening, I overheard them in their bedroom. The walls in old houses are thin, and their voices carried through the heating vent. She just sits there sometimes, Elaine was saying, staring at nothing. It's creepy. Maybe she's depressed. Richard offered, losing the house and all. She didn't lose it, she sold it, to be here, with family. The defensiveness in Elaine's voice was sharp. I'm doing everything I can. Richard, I cook separate meals because she won't eat quinoa. I drive her to appointments. I even bought those compression socks she likes. I know, honey, I'm just saying. What? What are you saying? A pause. Then Richard carefully. Maybe it's time to look at those brochures. The place in Rye seemed nice. They have activities. People her age. Not yet, Elaine said. She's not that bad yet. But God, some days. I pressed my pillow over my ears, but I could still hear my daughter's exhaustion. Her resentment, the countdown to my expulsion ticking in every word. The next morning, I smiled at breakfast, complimented the quinoa, thanked them for the new landscaping. And when Elaine left for her Pilates class, I pulled out the old address book I'd saved from Harold's desk and looked up my friend Dorothy's number. Dorothy, who'd mentioned something about a co-op for seniors. Dorothy, who'd said it was like living in a community, not a storage facility. My hand shook as I dialed, but my voice was steady when she answered, Dorothy, it's Margaret Hale. I think I need to make a change. The envelope was tucked inside a folder marked Estate Planning in Elaine's home office. I hadn't meant to snoop. I was only looking for stamps to mail Dorothy's birthday card. But there it was, sandwiched between tax returns and mortgage papers, practically begging to be discovered. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first page was a list of assisted living facilities in Westchester County, complete with pricing, amenities, and vacancy rates. Sunset Manor had 3 stars drawn next to it. Below that, a handwritten note in Elaine's careful script. Mom's SS Plus pension $3 200 month. Facility cost $$5,500. Difference covered by life insurance? I sank into Elaine's desk chair, the leather creaking under my weight. Life insurance. My life insurance. The policy Harold and I had scripted and saved for, meant to leave something for Elaine and the grandchildren, now reduced to a calculation. A way to offset the cost of warehousing me. The next page was worse. A printed email from someone named Janet Silverstein. Subject, Conservatorship questions. Dear Elaine, as discussed, establishing conservatorship over a parent requires demonstrating incapacity. The recent stroke helps your case, but you'll need documentation of cognitive decline. Start keeping a journal of concerning behaviors, forgetting names, confusion about finances, inability to manage daily tasks. The more evidence, the smoother the process. I couldn't read further. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears I refused to shed. Concerning behaviors. Like what? Wearing flannel nightgowns, planting the wrong flowers, remembering when my daughter used to call me her best friend. Behind the email was a financial summary I recognized too well. My financial summary, bank accounts, investment portfolio, the value of my jewelry, even an estimate for Harold's coin collection I'd kept in the safe deposit box. At the bottom, circled in red, total liquid assets, $847,000. House sale profit, $420,000. $1.2 million. That's what I was worth to my daughter. Not as a mother who'd stayed up nights when she had scarlet fever, who'd sewn her prom dress by hand because the one she wanted was too expensive, who'd taken out a second mortgage to pay for her college. Just a number, a problem with a profitable solution. The last document made bile rise in my throat, a memory care facility's glossy brochure with a sticky note attached. Mom's doctor says early stage planning is key. Tour scheduled for May 15. May 15. 3 weeks away. They were already planning tours while I sat upstairs, trying to make myself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. I carefully returned everything to its place, making sure the papers aligned exactly as I'd found them. Then I walked to the bathroom and vomited, as quietly as I could, muffling the sounds with a towel. Mustn't disturb anyone. Mustn't exhibit concerning behaviors. That night at dinner, I watched my daughter across the table. She chatted about her book club, complained about traffic, reminded Richard about their weekend plans. Normal conversation, normal family. I might have been a piece of furniture for all the attention paid to me. Mom, you're not eating. She finally noticed. Are you feeling all right? I looked at my plate, at the grilled chicken and steamed vegetables she'd prepared, healthy food, the kind they'd serve at Sunset Manor, no doubt. Just thinking, I said. About what? Her voice carried that forced patience I'd grown accustomed to. About how you used to cry when I left for work, clinging to my legs, about how you named your goldfish after me, about how you swore you'd take care of me the way I took care of Grandma Rose. Nothing important, I said, cutting a piece of chicken into tiny, manageable bites. Just old person thoughts. Richard laughed uncomfortably. Elaine shot him a look. After they went to bed, I sat in my room, my smelly, old person room, and did the math. $847,000 in investments, $420,000 from the townhouse. Harold's life insurance I'd never touched. It was more than enough to buy my freedom, to purchase the dignity my daughter had already sold. I pulled out the card Dorothy had given me months ago. Haven Grove Co-op, community living for independent seniors. The words blurred through my tears, but this time they weren't tears of hurt. They were tears of rage, pure, clarifying rage. My daughter wanted to make me disappear into some facility, to control my money, to erase the inconvenience of my existence. Fine, I'd disappear all right, but I'd be the one choosing where. Haven Grove wasn't what I expected. No institutional gray walls or antiseptic smell of defeat. Instead, a row of modest brick townhouses surrounded a common garden where actual flowers grew. Not the manicured uniformity of Elaine's yard, but a glorious chaos of roses, daylilies, and sweet peas climbing handmade trellises. I'd taken a taxi while Elaine was at her yoga class, telling the driver I was visiting a friend. Not entirely a lie. Dorothy had moved here 6 months ago, though I hadn't known until our phone call. Margaret! Dorothy appeared at the entrance, looking 10 years younger than when I'd last seen her at Harold's funeral. You came! She led me through a sunny common room where a group was playing cards, past a kitchen where someone was baking bread, real bread, the yeasty smell making my stomach growl, to her own unit. It's not fancy, she said, opening her door, but it's mine. The apartment was small but bright. Personal things everywhere. Dorothy's collection of blue willow china displayed in a glass cabinet, her late husband's model ships on the mantel, photos covering every surface. It smelled like cinnamon and old books and home. Tell me everything, Dorothy said, putting the kettle on, and I did. The overheard phone call, the banished furniture, the financial documents. By the time I finished, we'd gone through an entire pot of tea and half a package of store-bought cookies that tasted like freedom. That little witch, Dorothy said, with considerably more colorful language than I'll repeat. After everything you did for her, she's planning to tour facilities on May 15th. She's keeping a journal of my concerning behaviors. Dorothy snorted. Concerning behavior? You know what's concerning? A daughter who sees dollar signs when she looks at her mother. A knock interrupted us. A woman with silver braids and paint-stained fingers poked her head in. Sorry, Dot, but is your friend staying for dinner? We're doing Taco Tuesday and need a head count. Margaret, this is Joan. She runs our art classes. Joan, Margaret might be joining us if we play our cards right. Joan's face lit up. Oh, wonderful. We have a unit opening up next week. South-facing, good light, and the previous tenant left the most gorgeous window boxes. My heart stuttered. Next week? Martha's moving to Florida to be near her grandkids, Dorothy explained. We'll miss her, but her unit is lovely. Second floor, so no noise from above, and the bathroom was just renovated. I could show you now if you'd like, Joan offered. The manager's in today, too, if you have questions. I looked at Dorothy, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I'd like that. The unit was perfect, smaller than my room at Elaine's, but laid out efficiently. The kitchen window overlooked the garden. The living room had built-in bookshelves. The bathroom indeed sparkled with new fixtures, including grab bars that looked more like towel racks, safety disguised as normalcy. The previous tenant was a gardener, Joan said, showing me the window boxes. She'd love knowing someone who appreciates flowers would take over. The manager, a kind-faced man named Robert, explained the co-op structure. Residents own their units. Monthly fees cover maintenance, utilities, and community meals if you want them. We have a van for grocery runs, a partnership with the local clinic, and activities you can join or ignore as you please. How much? I asked, bracing myself. The number he quoted was less than Elaine spent monthly on her spa membership and Richard's golf club combined. There is a buy-in fee, Robert added apologetically. $50,000, I know that sounds steep. I'll take it. The words came out before I could second-guess them. Robert blinked. Joan clapped. Dorothy laughed out loud. Don't you want to think about it? Robert asked. Talk to family? My family, I said slowly, has already made their plans for me. This is my plan for myself. We returned to Dorothy's unit where I borrowed her phone. Mine was surely monitored and called Henry Walker, the senior partner at Brighton & Company, who'd handled my employment contracts for decades. Margaret, how wonderful to hear from you. How's retirement treating you? Henry, I need to sell my house, the one in Westchester, quickly and quietly. A pause. The house is in your name only. Yes, Harold made sure of that. He never trusted Richard. Smart man, market's good right now. I can have our real estate partner handle it. Discreet cash sale? How soon? For you? I'll make some calls. Could have an offer by week's end. My hands shook as I gave him the details. This was real. This was happening. Margaret. Henry's voice gentled. Is everything all right? Do you need other legal assistance? I thought of the conservatorship email. Not yet. But Henry? Don't mention this to anyone. Not even if someone claiming to be family calls asking, attorney-client privilege, my dear. Your secrets are safe with me. When I hung up, Dorothy and Joan were watching me with something like awe. You're really doing this. Joan said, I spent 50 years being good. I replied, being quiet, being convenient, making myself smaller to fit into other people's lives. I'm 74 years old. I'm done shrinking. Dorothy raised her teacup. To concerning behavior. Joan lifted hers. To new beginnings. I clinked my cup against theirs, the china ringing like a bell, like freedom, like the sound of a cage door opening. To taking my life back, I said, while I still can. Packing a life in secret requires a particular kind of arithmetic, not just what to take and what to leave, but what message each choice sends. I became a midnight mathematician, calculating the weight of memory against the lightness of spite. The categories came naturally. Keep, donate, leave nothing for them. I started with Harold's things, the few pieces I'd managed to save from Elaine's initial purge, his reading glasses, still in their leather case, the watch I'd given him for our 40th anniversary, his collection of first edition mysteries, the ones Elaine had called dusty old books when she'd tried to donate them last year. Each went into boxes labeled kitchen items that I stored under my bed, my mother's china, wrapped in the same tissue paper from her funeral 20 years ago. Joined them. The hand-stitched quilt she'd made for my wedding, folded with lavender sachets between the layers. These things had survived the Depression, the war, my childhood. They deserved better than Elaine's estate sale. The photographs required harder choices. I kept the ones that told my story. Harold and me on our wedding day, my parents at their citizenship ceremony, Elaine as a baby before she learned to calculate my worth, the recent ones, family vacations where I'd paid but stood at the edges, holiday dinners where my contributions went unthanked, those I left. Let her explain the gaps to her friends. My jewelry box yielded its own calculations. The diamond earrings Harold gave me for our 25th anniversary went into a velvet pouch, the pearls from my mother, the gold bangle from my first bonus at Brighton & Company, the tiny sapphire ring I'd bought myself when I made senior paralegal, all mine. But the family heirloom brooch Elaine had her eye on, the one she'd mentioned inheriting someday, that I wrapped in old newspaper and marked for donation, let some stranger enjoy what my daughter could only price. The books were easier. I kept the ones with marginalia, Harold's notes in pencil, my comments in pen, our conversation across the years preserved on paper, the book club selections Elaine had bought me. To keep your mind sharp, Mom, stayed on the shelf, sharp enough to see through you. Dear, late at night, while the house slept, I sorted papers, birth certificate, passport, social security card into a folder marked private. The files from Brighton & Company, letters of recommendation from partners who'd valued my work, photographs from office Christmas parties where I'd been Margaret, not Mom, not a burden. Those came too. Proof that I'd been somebody once. Still was. The hardest part was the clothing. Each dress held a memory, each sweater a season of my life, but I was brutal in my calculations. 7 days of clothes, suitable for a new life. The flannel nightgowns Elaine found so offensive. The comfortable shoes, she said, aged me. The purple cardigan Richard once said made me look spry, his tone suggesting a performing seal. Everything else went into bags marked donate. Except for one thing, the silk dress I'd never worn, bought on impulse 5 years ago, a ridiculous shade of emerald green that made my eyes bright and my skin glow. Harold had whistled when I tried it on, but I'd hung it in the closet, saving it for some special occasion that never came, too fancy for grocery shopping, too much for family dinners where I already took up too much space. I folded it carefully into my suitcase, in my new life. Tuesday could be special enough. The night before Henry called with the offer, cash buyer, closing in 10 days, $20,000 over asking. I made my final calculations, 20 boxes, labeled and taped, 2 suitcases, packed and ready, 1 banker's box of documents that proved I was more than the sum of my Social Security checks, and 3 garbage bags full of gifts. The scarves Elaine bought me every Christmas, always beige or gray, to go with everything, Mom. The large print books that assumed my mind was as weak as my hip, the orthopedic slippers, the compression socks, the magnifying glass, all the gifts that said old and declining and almost gone. Those I left in the garage with a note. For the next old person you need to warehouse. They'll need these more than I do. The cruelty of it tasted strange on my tongue, but then I remembered the printout of facilities. My life insurance circled in red, and the taste turned sweet. On my last night of packing, I found the Mother's Day card Elaine had made in 3rd grade, crayon hearts and misspelled promises. I love you more than chocolate cake. I'll take care of you forever. I held it for a long moment, then placed it in the donate box. Someone at Goodwill might appreciate the irony. At 3 a.m, surveying my sordid life, I realized I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because of what I was leaving behind, but because of what I was taking. The right to my own choices, my own space, my own worth measured in more than dollars and inconvenience. Tomorrow, Elaine would leave for Vermont. In 3 days, she'd return to find her investment opportunity gone, along with the problem of what to do with me. I pulled out the emerald dress one more time, holding it up to the mirror in the darkness. I could almost see the woman I'd been, the woman I still was underneath the weight of being someone's burden. "Hold on," I whispered to her. "Just a few more days." Friday morning arrived wrapped in perfect spring weather, the kind that makes liars of everyone who says they prefer autumn. Elaine bustled through the kitchen, packing the SUV with enough supplies for a month rather than a weekend. The refrigerator stocked. "Mom," she said, not looking at me as she checked her list. "There's soup you can reheat, and I've written down the microwave instructions again. They're on the counter. Thank you, dear." I sipped my coffee, the same bland decaf she'd switched me to without asking. Richard dragged suitcases past the kitchen, his golf clubs clanking. "Weather's supposed to be perfect up there. 72 and sunny. How lovely." I smiled at him. He looked through me. "Already on vacation. Now, Mom." Elaine finally faced me, her expression settling into what I'd come to think of as her caretaker face. "If you need anything, Mrs. Patterson next door has our number, but try not to bother her unless it's an emergency." "Of course. And remember, no cooking on the stovetop while we're gone. Just the microwave. I understand. Your medications are in the weekly organizer. Don't forget the pink pills at bedtime." "I won't forget." She hesitated at the door, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Concern? But then Richard honked the horn, and the moment passed. "We'll be back Monday afternoon. Be careful on the stairs." "Have a wonderful time," I said, meaning it. They would have 3 more days of wonderful time than they knew. I stood at the window, watching the SUV disappear around the corner. Then I waited another hour, just to be sure. Elaine had returned once for a forgotten phone charger, another time for her special pillow. But finally, the house settled into genuine emptiness. The movers from Haven Grove arrived at 9:30 sharp. Dorothy had recommended them. Discreet and efficient, she'd said. They were both, "Morning, Mrs. Hale." The lead mover, a young man named James, shook my hand. "Mrs. Chen said you're on a timeline. Everything marked with blue tape goes," I instructed. "Nothing else." They worked like a well-oiled machine. 20 boxes, 2 suitcases, 6 garbage bags of clothes for donation, and my potted plants, the ones I'd rescued from Elaine's landscaping purge and hidden in the garage. In 2 hours, they'd loaded my life into their small truck. "What about these?" James held up the 3 bags I'd marked for the next old person. "Leave those in the garage, visible from the door." While they worked, I walked through the house one last time. The family photos still smiled from their mantels, minus me. The leather chair still moldered in the basement. The guest room, my room, looked exactly as it had when I'd arrived, as if I'd never existed at all. Perfect. In the kitchen. I placed the envelope on the island, right where Elaine set her purse when she came home. Inside, on my personal stationery, the kind she'd called old-fashioned. I'd written, "The house has been sold. Closing was yesterday. New owners take possession in 30 days. This should give you adequate time to make other arrangements. The profits from the sale have been distributed according to my wishes. Do not attempt to contact me. My attorney, Henry Walker at Brighton and Company, will handle any necessary communications. P.S. You were right about one thing. Fresh air does help with headaches. I'm getting plenty now." No signature. She'd know. I added a second envelope with Henry's business card and a copy of the sales agreement, proving this was no senior moment, no confused mistake. I was of sound mind and had made sound decisions, the kind that didn't include being warehoused at Sunset Manor. All set, Mrs. Hale. James appeared in the doorway. Anything else? I looked around the kitchen where I'd cooked countless meals that went unappreciated, where I'd overheard my daughter pricing my life, where I'd shrunk myself to fit into corners. Yes, I said. One more thing. I opened the refrigerator and removed the pre-made soups, the microwave dinners, the food deemed appropriate for someone too old and feeble to be trusted with flame. All of it went into the trash. Let her come home to empty shelves and explain that to the new owners. Petty? Perhaps, but I'd earned the right to a little pettiness. Outside. Mrs. Patterson was watering her roses. She waved, and I waved back, knowing she'd have quite the story when Elaine called her Monday in hysterics. Lovely weather, she called out. Perfect for new beginnings, I replied. James helped me into the truck's passenger seat, unnecessarily but kindly. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. I'd learned that from Lot's wife. Never look back when leaving a place that was killing you slowly. Nice neighborhood, James commented as we drove past the manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. Yes, I agreed. Very nice. Just not for me. My phone, silenced, lit up with a text from Dorothy. Your room's ready. Joan's making welcome brownies, I typed back with fingers that barely trembled. On my way home. Because that's what Haven Grove would be. Not a facility, not a warehouse for the inconveniently elderly, but a home. A place where Tuesday could be special enough for emerald silk, where my flowers could grow wild, where I could smell like lavender and memories and myself. The truck accelerated onto the highway, carrying me toward my new life. In 3 days. Elaine would discover that the concerning behavior she'd been documenting had been the sanest thing I'd done in years. The morning light filtered through the trees as we drove away from Westchester, each mile loosening a knot I hadn't realized was tied inside me. James kept the radio on low, some oldies station playing songs from when I was young and believed the world was infinite. I held my purse in my lap. Inside it, the cashier's check from the house sale and a small envelope of cash for immediate needs. My hands found the worn leather of Harold's wallet, which I'd taken to carrying after he died. He'd always kept a fortune cookie message in it. Your patience will be rewarded. 3 years I'd carried it. Today. Finally. It rang true. You okay, Mrs. Hale? James glanced over as we stopped at a red light. You need water or anything? I'm perfect, I said, surprised to find it was true. The highway gave way to smaller roads, then to the tree-lined streets near Haven Grove. When we turned the final corner, I could see the residents already gathering. Dorothy stood at the entrance, Joan beside her with a plate of something covered in foil. 2 men I didn't recognize were setting up a small table near the garden. Looks like you've got a welcoming committee, James observed. I wasn't expecting... Dorothy's been talking about you all week, he said, pulling into the loading area. These folks are excited to have you. As soon as I stepped out, Dorothy enveloped me in a hug that smelled like vanilla and oil paint. You did it. You actually did it. Welcome home, Margaret, Joan said, offering the plate. Brownies, as promised, made with real butter and absolutely no concern for cholesterol. The 2 men introduced themselves as Bill and Frank, residents who'd volunteered to help move boxes. Dorothy says you're a gardener, Frank said. Wait till you see what we've got going in the community plot. It took less than an hour to move everything in. My unit, my home, seemed to embrace each piece as it arrived. Harold's books found their places on the built-in shelves. My mother's china gleamed behind the glass cabinet doors I'd polished that morning. The emerald dress hung in the bedroom closet like a promise. Where do you want this? Bill held up a box labeled kitchen items. Counter's fine. I'll sort it later. Later, I had later here, time that was mine to organize, to waste, to savor. As the movers brought in the last boxes, my phone began buzzing insistently. Elaine's ringtone. I'd assigned it the funeral march months ago. Petty, but satisfying. I let it go to voicemail. Someone's eager to reach you, Dorothy noticed. Someone can wait. By noon, my new space looked lived in. The window boxes held my rescued plants, already perking up in the afternoon sun. My reading chair, a new one I'd ordered, delivered that morning, faced the garden view. On the kitchen table, a vase of daffodils from Joan brightened the whole room. "Come on," Dorothy said after the movers left. "Lunch is communal on Saturdays. You can meet everyone." The dining room buzzed with conversation. Real conversation. About books and travel and grandchildren who visited by choice, not obligation. No one spoke to me slowly or loudly. No one explained the menu as if I couldn't read. When I mentioned my years at Brighton and Company, a former court reporter launched into stories about depositions gone wrong, and suddenly I was laughing harder than I had in years. "So you just left?" asked Sarah, who'd moved in last year after selling her brownstone. "Just packed up and got out?" My daughter was planning to tour memory care facilities. I thought I'd save her the trouble. The table erupted in approving murmurs. These people understood. They'd all made their own escapes from well-meaning families who saw decline where there was simply difference, who mistook independence for inability. After lunch, I returned to my unit to unpack. My phone showed 17 missed calls, all from Elaine. The text messages grew increasingly frantic. "Mom, where are you? Mrs. Patterson says she saw movers? Mom, please call me. I'm calling the police if you don't respond." Let her call them. I was a grown woman who'd sold her own house and moved of her own free will. No crime in that. I turned the phone off and put it in a drawer. Then I made myself a cup of tea. Proper tea. Not the weak herbal stuff Elaine insisted on. And sat by my window. The garden below showed signs of spring everywhere. New growth pushing through old soil. Second chances, written in green. A knock interrupted my reverie. Dorothy stood at my door with a manila folder. "From Robert," she said. "Garden plot assignments, and you've got 16 right next to mine. Good southern exposure." I took the folder, feeling its weight. Such a simple thing, a piece of earth to tend. But it meant I was expected to stay, to plant things that would take months to bloom. I had a future here measured in seasons, not medical appointments. "Also," Dorothy continued, "dinner's at 6, but a few of us usually have wine in the common room around 5. You're welcome to join. I'll be there." After she left, I unpacked my mother's quilt and spread it on the bed. The stitches she'd sewn with arthritis-gnarled fingers still held strong. I thought about calling Elaine back, then decided against it. Monday would come soon enough. She'd find the letter, rage and panic, call Henry, discover it was all legal and binding, for now. I had a garden plot to inspect and wine at 5 with people who saw me as Margaret, not Mom's dementia waiting to happen. I put on lipstick, subtle pink, but still, and headed outside. The afternoon sun warmed my face as I walked to plot 16, my gardening gloves in my pocket, my new life spreading before me like freshly turned soil, ready for whatever I chose to plant. Monday morning arrived dressed in golden light and birdsong. I woke naturally at 6, no alarm needed, and made coffee in my own kitchen with my own hands on my own stove. The simple act felt revolutionary. By 7, I was in the garden, planting the marigold seeds I'd saved from my old garden. The soil was dark and rich. Nothing like the clay I'd fought with at Elaine's. Other early risers waved as they passed, joggers, dog walkers, fellow gardeners claiming their piece of morning peace. "Looking good, Margaret," Frank called out, wheelbarrow full of compost balanced expertly despite his 81 years. At 8:45, I went inside to shower and change. The emerald dress slipped over my head like water. Cool silk against skin that remembered being young. I added my mother's pearl necklace and the gold hoops Harold had given me for our anniversary. In the mirror stood a woman I recognized, not the faded ghost from Elaine's house, but Margaret Hale, fully present and accounted for. My phone, retrieved from the drawer, showed 43 missed calls. I powered it on just as it rang again. Elaine. I let it ring twice more, then answered. "Where are you?" Her voice cracked with hysteria. "We came home and the house, your room, Mom. What have you done?" "Good morning, Elaine." Don't you good morning me. I've called the police, the hospitals. Mrs. Patterson said she saw movers. Mom, are you having some kind of episode? I poured myself fresh coffee, taking my time. No episode. I've simply moved. Moved? Moved where, Mom? You can't just... I can, and I did. As the letter explained, the house has been sold. You have 30 days to relocate. You sold our house. My house. Check the deed. This is insane. You're clearly not competent to make these decisions. I'm calling Dr. Morrison. We're coming to get you right now. Where are you? I walked to my window, phone cradled against my shoulder, and looked out at the garden where Dorothy was watering her tomatoes. The morning light caught the spray, turning it to diamonds. I'm home, I said simply. What's the address? Mom, tell me the address. No. No? Mother, this is ridiculous. You need help. The stroke clearly affected your judgment. My judgment is fine. So is my memory. For instance, I remember finding your estate planning folder, the one with the nursing home brochures and the conservatorship information. Silence. Beautiful. Damning silence. Mom, I can explain. No need. Your calculations were very thorough. My Social Security plus pension minus facility costs covered by life insurance. You even circled the total in red. 1.2 million, wasn't it? That's not, I was just planning. Yes, I know. Well, I've done some planning of my own. Mom, please, let's talk about this. Tell me where you are, and we'll work this out. I laughed, surprising myself with how genuine it sounded. We'll work nothing out. I'm done being worked on, worked around, worked over. I'm done being your problem to solve. You're not a problem. You're my mother. No, Elaine, I was your mother. Now I'm apparently a smell to be masked, a burden to be managed, an asset to be liquidated. That's not fair. Fair? I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. Was it fair when you threw away my flowers? When you hid my photos? When you told your friend I smelled like a nursing home? Another silence. Then, quieter. You heard that. I hear everything, dear. The walls in old houses are thin, just like the patience of old women who've had enough. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. And that's fine. You're entitled to your feelings, just as I'm entitled to live where I'm wanted, not warehoused. But where will you go? What will you do? I watched a cardinal land on my window box, pecking at the seeds I'd scattered. Whatever I choose, wear flannel nightgowns, plant the wrong flowers, smell like memories and lavender. Live, Elaine. I'm gonna live. This is a mistake. You'll regret this. When you need help, I'll ask people who see me as more than a bank account with a breakdown pending. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm doing this for me. What am I supposed to tell people? And there it was, the real concern. Not where would I sleep tonight, not whether I was safe or happy, but what would the neighbors think? Tell them the truth, I suggested, that your mother refused to go gentle into that good nursing home, that she sold her house and bought her freedom, that sometimes the concerning behavior is the sanest choice. Mom, goodbye. Elaine, my lawyer will be in touch about the house details. Wait, Mom, please. I hung up. Then I blocked her number. Richard's too. The relief felt like taking off shoes that had pinched for years. My new life called coffee with Dorothy at 9, art class at 10, Joan teaching watercolors today, lunch in the dining room where no one would monitor my salt intake, an afternoon in my garden plot, hands deep in soil that belonged to me. I made one last call. Henry Walker answered on the second ring. Margaret, I was expecting to hear from you today. How did the move go? Perfectly. You'll be hearing from my daughter soon. I'll handle it. The sale is ironclad. Don't worry. I'm not worried. Henry, for the first time in years, I'm not worried at all. After we hung up, I walked to my kitchen table where sunlight pooled like honey. I had a watercolor class to attend, wearing an emerald dress that made me look alive. Let Elaine explain that to her book club. I opened my door to the sounds of Haven Grove stirring, laughter from the common room, the clink of dishes, a piano playing somewhere. My people, my place, my choice. They thought I'd stay put, growing smaller and quieter until I disappeared into some facility's ledger. They thought fear would keep me tethered to a life that was killing me by degrees. But I'd left because I wasn't afraid anymore, and that made all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is choose ourselves.